So we have this condition today that we're all separated and broken up in small little bits. And that's what Christ has willed as our crucifixion. I always remind people, though, that when we say that, what we should remember is this, that all the fathers agree that the history of the church will reproduce exactly the history of Christ. And as far as I can see, if you want to draw a picture, a word picture of today, according to the image of Christ in his passion, you should say that, well, we have the crown of thorns, certainly, because we have those theologians on top of our back. Richard McCormick down here, and Gandon up in Canada, and people all over the place. And they're sticking thorns into our head. And they're shaming us, and they're torturing us. And we're being scourged at the pillar. Yeah, we're being scourged because of our disgraceful behavior. Our pedophiliac priests and our Gucci nuns and our apostate bishops. And I could name off several dioceses in this country of ours, like, for instance, the Diocese of Albany. I consider it to be an apostate bishop. And the Diocese of Milwaukee with Bishop Weakland, Archbishop Weakland, and the others. And I think they probably themselves would agree to it. But this is all scourging of our public body. But we haven't yet started going to Calvary, carrying our cross, and we haven't reached Calvary, nor have we been crucified. Look at the lovely time that's ahead of us, Bernard, if we're going to follow that pattern of our Lord's sufferings.
That means that there's going to be a resurrection.
Of course there's going to be a resurrection, and we will be resurrected. And we'll be resurrected in glory, but after our crucifixion and death. And we have to suffer that, I'm afraid. And once that is over, once Our Lady comes on her appointed time, giving us the signal that she has promised to give us, then we can lift our faces to the east, because it's from the east our salvation will come. That's in brief that is how Satan is working at the present moment. And there is no gainsaying his power in the church on account of the unfaith he has sown. He has so many supporters within the church now.
And let's take a look at the manifestations of this support that Satan has within the church. Let's say heresies like liberation theology or this New Age philosophy.
Yeah.
Could you maybe describe briefly some of the worst ones?
Well, I'll tell you, you've named two principal ones. Liberation theology, of course, was, as you know, concocted with one deliberate reason in mind. In the 50s they did this. Sat down carefully in Panama City, a group of people, Catholic theologians and Marxists, and they worked out the following, that there was no way you could touch the Catholicism directly of Latin American peoples. They were just their culture, their very names, their salutations, the names of the week, everything they did, even when they cursed, it implied religion. So they said, why don't we use Catholic terminology in a Marxist sense, but still using it? So they set out to speak about La Virgen, the Virgin, who is the mother of revolutionaries, Madre de la Revolución, and speak about Christ, the bread of the workers. But when they said El pan de los trabajadores, they meant Christ, the bread of the workers, which we make in our factory, we've taken from the capitalists, and so on. They Marxized every Christian concept, or they Christianized every Marxist concept. And it was a very subtle thing, because it wiped out, there was no such thing as personal sin. The only sin they want to liberate themselves from was capitalism, Yankee capitalism. That was the enemy. But liberación didn't mean any liberation from sin by the blood of Christ. That didn't matter. And at the famous meeting of the liberation theologians in Brazil in 1987, with 12 bishops, and I don't know how many priests, and how much lay people, everybody went and trod on the crucifix. Because they said the crucifix and the passion of Jesus, this enervates our fighting revolutionary power. And they have started off on that line. Now, unfortunately, you see, liberation theology has fallen very evil days, because Moscow has ceased to support them. And the great vindicator and champion of liberation theology in this part of the world, Mr. Castro, is sinking beneath the waves with a stiff upper lip. And he's on his way out slowly. So they have, but it has created terrible damage, because while it's now seeping out of Latin America slowly, it's not out of it yet, it's still ensconced in North America in the seminaries and in England, where they're all liberation theologians. And you dare speak to them about going to confession, they say, for what? There's no such thing as personal sin. Sin is social sin, sinful structure, sinful governments. And we're not sinful governments, just the government we have is. So that's one great sin, one great heresy, and it's still there and it's trouble to the church. The second one is more pervasive, and it's the New Age. Bernard, you've heard about political correctness. It's the rage now. In New York, in Los Angeles, in California, in down south, in Dallas and Fort Worth, all over the United States, in our courts, in our newspapers. There are certain things you cannot say, otherwise you are not politically correct and socially acceptable. You cannot, for instance, be openly advocating, for instance, celibacy. Oh, you don't do that. That's medieval, and it's superstitious, and it produces all these pedophiliac priests. And that's the argument against it. Priests should marry, and have the option at least to be able to marry, and therefore they get rid of their bad instincts. They wouldn't become deviants. Another thing political correctness forbids is any attack on homosexuality as a sin. It's not. It's an alternative way of life. Any attack on abortion? No, it's a legitimate constitutional right of every red-blooded American man and woman to have an abortion or to procure an abortion. The New World is built on one principle. The New World is built on the principle that man, if left alone by religion and religionists and hierarchical authorities, is able to build a paradise on earth. And you want to worship the Virgin? Fine, worship her, but worship her with us. Let us all share it, be sane, have an even plain surface on which we can all worship as we want to worship, but leave the other alone. Don't say he's wrong. He's just as right as you, and you're just as right as him. This is the New Age. Of course, we will have to worship one Father, because there's only one God, you Christians say, you Catholics say. We agree to that. But it's the Father of the earth. It's the Father of fruit and flowers, Father of lambs, Father of fruitful gardens and trees and meadows, and a Father for all our agriculture, Father for our technology. That's real God, because that helps man. It's no longer a dominant, hierarchic, exclusivist, paternalistic, patriarchal church demanding sacrifices and waiting for pie in the sky. There's no pie in the sky. The pie is here. And there's enough for everybody if you Catholics and religions will stop being exclusivist and join in. That's the New Age. And the New Age is more subtle than anything else, because I'll tell you why. The essence of the New Age technique now being taught to companies and to company executives is self-control. And the exercises of the New Age being used in seminars, paid for thousands of dollars by big companies like GM and several other big companies in the United States, consists in submitting your mind to a discipline. And when we examine the discipline from our point of view here, we find out that discipline is almost the same as TM. It does the very same silencing of your faculties and leaves you wide open to any influence that will come in. Now, I'll tell you one thing. Whatever other influences are out there looking for a point of entry, there's one influence roaming around like a lion, seeking whom he may devour, and that is Lucifer. And if you adopt this, the mental attitude that they are trying to inculcate the New Agers, as they call them, you'll find that you are sitting duck for the most amazing row of influences. And we think that it's partly the rise of the New Age system of egalitarian treatment of all religions and the submission of the mind and the opening up of the spirit to the great force. We have found that the rise of that is coetaneous, is simultaneous with the rise of this intense diabolism, intense Satanism. So there must be some organic connection between the two. We're persuaded that there is a connection between the two. The New Age is pernicious because, see, it's good, it's compassionate. It says don't kill, don't steal, don't kill little children, don't conceive them either. But that's the most merciful way of not doing things. And don't overpopulate the world, and don't make war. No, make love. And join in the technological and industrial advancement of all peoples. And don't see black or white or sky blue, pink. Color doesn't matter. So it sounds very democratic, it sounds very compassionate, it sounds very human. The other thing is that Christianity, the message of Christ, is not democratic, it's not human, it's supernatural, and it's meant to prepare us for eternity. So the New Age is the subtlest attack on the church. It has invaded the church. And the amount of Catholics who now become Freemasons, say, or join organizations that are very anti-Catholic, is due to the fact that the leavening of this New Age mentality, who said, haven't we been fighting long enough with each other? Why can't we sit down and practice love and agree with people and agree to build with them? What's wrong with that? And if I have a cathedral in Pittsburgh and you have no cathedral, and you're a Methodist or a Lutheran, well, have my cathedral, because we're all worshipping the same God.